Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's lecture, which is about learning about adjectives in Sesotho. Now, ka Sesotho, just as a reminder that for each concept that we learn, it's important that you remind yourself of the noun class system because we still use nouns when we are learning about adjectives, and it's important that you do so. So remember also that the structure of our sentence typically starts with a proper noun. Ka Sesotho re re ke mabitsobitso. These can be names of places, people, and we always write these with the capital letter. Other nouns in Sesotho, such as mme or ntate, these nouns will only begin with a capital letter if they begin the sentence. So if you use it anywhere else in the sentence, maybe in the place of the object, then you write it in small, in lowercase. So only when it begins a sentence. Then we have other common nouns. These we typically use or include either as objects in the sentence, but they can also begin the sentence as well. So there are some examples there. Katsi, ntja, situlo, tafule, kgomo, jalo jalo. Okay? So when do we use the auxiliary in the sentence? Now, when we're learning about verbs and adjectives, you'll find that the auxiliary we mostly include when we use a sentence that has a verb. Okay, so if your sentence, for example, only has an adjective and there's no verb in that sentence, then we don't include the auxiliary in that sentence. Okay, the auxiliary verb is only used when there is a verb in the sentence. So it can mean, for example, in this case, our auxiliary is a, which is the morpheme a, as in me o aja, Tumi o aja, or Tumi o abua, jalo jalo. So it's a verb that supports the main verb in the sentence. So in the instance now where we're going to learn about adjectives, if the sentence has a verb, then yes, we can use the auxiliary. But if there's no verb in a sentence, then we do not use this parts of speech in Sesotho. Now look at some examples there. Dumelo o aja. So the auxiliary always comes before the main verb. Okay. Dumelo o aja dijo. Dumelo is eating food. Now look at an example where there's only an adjective. So here we don't have the auxiliary because there's no verb in that sentence. No? Dumelo o lapile. The sentence is merely just describing. No? Dumelo is hungry. Then there's another one, a sentence that has a verb and an adjective. Dumelo o aja dijo hobane o lapile. Okay, Dumelo is eating food because he is hungry. No? So there's an auxiliary because there's a verb, and we also have a describing word that describes the noun polelong ya rona, which is the word lapile. Okay, so just to give you a refresher of the revision of the noun class structure, so here it is then now. So when we're using these sentences, so the basic Sesotho sentence structure begins with a subject morpheme, an auxiliary verb, the verb, and the object. Okay, now this is in its basic forms. Some sentences will include adverbs, which are those that describe the verb, and then others will include adjectives. Okay, adjectives are the words that describe the noun. Okay, which is what we're going to learn about today. So another way of thinking about it is that in Sesotho, for example, our nouns, if the noun is a living noun, that sentence can have a verb, or it can have an adjective, or it can have both. Okay, But if the sentence is a non-living noun, a non-living noun like a chair, situlo, table, tafule, those nouns, they are non-living, so they can't do an action. So those sentences can only have an adjective. Okay, we can only describe the non-living noun. So here's a typical example. Me o a ja dijo. Now here, me is a living noun. So me can do an action. And the action there in our example is the word ja. Ne? The second example there, me o ja dijo haholo. Now there again, in this instance, there's an adverb that describes how, ne? How, an adverb of manner, how the woman eats, which is haholo, ne? Okay, so there's the adverb there in the sentence. Me o ja dijo haholo, ne? Okay. Then, if we look there, the basic Sesotho sentence structure, when a sentence begins with a pronoun, and it does not consist of a subject, okay? So have a look there. Why don't we have the subject? Morpheme, because there is no subject in the sentence, okay? So, ke a ja dijo, re a hlatswa dijana, wena o tsheha ngwana, le a bina-pina, ba tshela metsi, ne? Okay, so those examples all begin with the pronoun, and there's no subject morpheme in those sentences because there is no subject. Okay? Now, ha re shebeng maetsi a rona in more detail. Okay? So let's have a more detailed look into the adjectives. In Sesotho, adjectives, just like in English, they are words that are used to describe the noun, okay? And ka Sesotho, in the plural form, we refer to them as makgethi, ne? And in the singular form, re wa bitsa lekgethi, okay? Re le bitsa lekgethi, ne? So ha le mangata ke makgethi, that's in plural form, and once it's more than one, it's already plural form, okay? Then in singular form, it's ke lekgethi. Then, now let's look at examples of sentences that have living nouns that are adjectives. Now, if we see here a sentence that has only a noun, that has only an adjective and not a verb, we do not add the auxiliary verb in Sesotho, okay? Because there is no action or doing word. So here are some examples. Ngwanana o motle. Moshanyana o motelele. Bana ba thabile. Tau e lapile. Okay? Here are the examples there. Now note the sentence structure. When a sentence only has a verb, okay? So when a sentence only has a verb and an adjective in Sesotho, it must also have the auxiliary verb, okay? So look at the structure there that you are seeing. Then let's have a look at examples with a verb and an adjective. Ngwanana o a bososela hobane o motle. Moshanyana o a khumama hobane o motelele. Bana ba tsheha hobane ba thabile. Tau e ja haholo hobane e lapile. Now, here are some examples with non-living nouns. Key thing to remember here is that a sentence with the non-living noun can never have a verb, okay? Because the noun cannot do an action. Lebese le monate, situlo se robehile. Mose o motle, mafielo a matjha. Okay, so here's other examples as well. Tjhelete e ngata. Thapo e kgutshwane. Tafole e sootho. Moriri o motsho. Kausu e tabohile. Dieta di a nkga. So you can do this learning task on your own and see how many you can get right. Okay. So this is a further enrichment task that you can also complete on your own. Try not to look at the answers before you complete it first. Okay. So that's it for this week. I will see you all in the next session. Bye-bye.